it's pretty interesting. And, if you're just tuning in, you might, when I get started on this next thing, you might be saying, well, why are you talking about the Cubs? This is St. Louis. Well, the Cubs are the Cardinals rivalry. And just as we talked about Milwaukee getting William Contreras, which was they were the winner of that three-way trade that involved Sean Murphy. We talk about the Brewers and what they're trying to do, and they've had a very intriguing offseason. And I always think it's kind of always important to kind of scout the enemy camp. So the Cubs are a puzzle to everybody, including their own fans and the media in Chicago. Because, Jim Hewer, you remember at the beginning of the offseason in terms of the free agent market, trading market, whatever, everybody, the Cubs somehow had given the indication or the impression, Jed Hoyer saying this, saying that, ownership indicating that the Cubs had money to spend and all this. So, I think everybody, just about, not everybody, whatever, a large percentage of people follow baseball thought, okay, you got all these shortstops out there. Hey, the Cubs are going to they're going to go hard after Turner. They're going to go, if they don't get Turner, they love Carlos Correa. They're going to go after him. They like Xander Bogaerts. They'll make a run at him. They're happy with all of these guys, and they're come out of the offseason with one of them. Well, all of those guys are gone, and when Correa signed with the Giants, there was kind of I guess you call it barking sounds coming out of Chicago. It's like, well, when are they going to spend money? This is the third largest market in sports in North America. It's the third largest market in baseball. They built up Wrigleyville with all this real estate, all these money-making things. They got their own hotel that's done very, very well. They got the new TV network that they own. So why are they acting like the Cleveland Guardians or something? What the heck's going on here? And it's a really great question because all they've done so far, and they added Brad Boxberger today on an economical free agent deal, signing him as a free agent, so that strengthens their bullpen to an extent. That's a nice pickup, but it's not an earth. It ain't going to make the ground rumble in the north side. They signed Cody Bellinger, and that's a good pickup because why not? Very little liability there. He can run the base and play defense, even if he doesn't bounce back in a big way offensively. And they signed Jamison Tyone, who does not have much of a strikeout punch anymore, but there's a chance he'll get that back. But they did sign someone in Tyone who can, they can plug into the rotation. So it's not like they haven't done anything. But the big move hasn't come. And now Chicago, all of Chicago, is turning its eyes to the Dansby Swanson situation because he's the last shortstop standing. Nobody really knows what he wants or what the asking price there, but he's the only guy left for teams that wanted a shortstop, presumably the Cubs being among them. And are the Cubs going to make their big play? Are they going to go for the one, top level or high profile shortstop that is left on this market? I guess we're just going to have to sit tight and wait and see. But I was reading, let me try to find this. I was reading today in The Athletic, and one of their beat writers had a mailbag about what the Cubs might do. And it was really interesting because, again, the expectation is that they would spend a lot of money and they would really be much more aggressive. And they're still holding on to their money. But one thing that is interesting about the Bellinger contract, it's not that much in terms of what it will pay him in 2023. What they did, the Cubs actually put into the contract a lower salary for this year, and it might be like $10 million, but then there would be a buyout that is basically a bonus that he'll collect later if they buy him out. So they kind of deferred some money and just said, well, we'll make this an option and a buyout. it's a mutual option, but either way, it would be a buyout if one side wants to get out of the contract. So that caused more confusion, and I hope I'm explaining that properly. It caused confusion because they reduced what they owed Bellinger for this season. They reduced it by several $1 million, $5-6 million, something like that. Well, if they're doing that, that got people to think, well, that's because they're about to go big on something else and they wanted a little more payroll space. I guess that still holds true if they are, in fact, in play for Swanson. But more than anything, I just think, it's fascinating to read about this stuff, that this would-be giant who can do anything they want financially, anything. But, and they've sold off so many of their players. And not just walkier guys. And, all of them went except for Contreras. Now he's gone. Remember how they, for no real reason, no good reason, they decided, well, we got to offload you Darvish's salary. We're going to have to trade him. I mean, making all kinds of moves like that where they're just subtracting players. Big name players. Core players. And yet, what the heck has come in? In other words, they claim they're not going to do a major rebuild, and they don't want to be called a rebuilding team. They almost get offended. Well, why get offended? Because that's what you're doing. You're not plowing a lot of money back into the club. You haven't replaced, in terms of value, the players that you said bye-bye to as free agents or traded away, guys that help you win a World Series. So why are they acting like you would expect maybe the Milwaukee Brewers to act or some other mid-market team to act? Oh, we got to be careful. We got to be conservative. We got to be cautious. I don't know. It's really strange, given the enormous revenue streams that team has, that franchise has coming in, and I don't blame Cubs fans for being ticked off. I don't blame the media for raising hell. So, if some of you think the Cardinals are bad as far as the way they run the team and as how cautious they are or whatever you want to frame it, imagine if you were a Cubs fan right now. Because this is just nuts. That they just don't want to jump in. And now if they get Swanson, you can say, okay, now they're starting to jump in. But why is it taking them so long, and why do they have so much reluctance to jump in when they can pay for anything they want? Money is no object with them. There's a lot of restlessness around Wrigleyville right now. Cubs fans are going nuts. I don't blame them.
I'm there with you on the Cubs. I'll never understand that. They're the rival, but I don't get Boston not doing anything and letting guys walk in recent seasons. But the Cubs, like you said, everything should be moving forward there. It's not short on revenue, and they just, we kind of talked about it with the Blues a little bit, that what they let get away and what they bring in is nowhere near on the same level. What they got. I mean, hey, Patrick Wisdom's going to be our everyday third baseman. Okay. That's bad. That's a third baseman for a bad baseball team is what that is. And there's so many guys on that list. I mean, Madrigal, Horner, those aren't difference-making players. I thought for sure they would go after one of these shortstops. And Swanson's still there, but even of all the group, he's on the bottom end of that group. They should have gone after Correa stronger. I thought for sure he might end up there, and that's not the case. It's good for Cardinal fans because that means Cubs are still going to be bad. There's a group of team. There's another team that isn't serious, I should say, about trying to win this division. But you're right.
Not in 23, right?
Yeah, I don't get this.
The other thing too, Patrick Mooney's an excellent writer. Has covered the Cubs for quite a while, including going back to 2015-16 when they really ascended. And I'm going to try to paraphrase this because I don't want to read this stuff, but he talked about how the Cubs are, and this is a very interesting part of this. The Cubs are sending, and I'm talking about management. Mm-hmm. They're sending signals that there may be some dissension or some kind of disconnect in the front office between the baseball people and the finance people. They've had a guy, Crane Kenny, who has been their president of baseball operations for a long time. And he normally doesn't say a lot. I mean, he's a personable guy. I've talked to him. But he went on their flagship radio station, The Score in Chicago, and basically said, and again, I am loosely paraphrasing, but I'm also being accurate. He went on there earlier this week, maybe it was last week, and he said, in effect, like, well, you know, we have money to spend. I mean, the money's there. Our baseball people know that they have money. They know that there was some money they didn't spend last year, and that rolled over to give them more this year. And Patrick Mooney was right in saying it almost sounded like the president of business operations, who's really the number 2 guy in that whole setup to the ownership, is kind of pointing a finger at Jed Hoyer and the baseball people in kind of like, well, why are you asking me? They have the money. So there seems to be, a little bit of tension going on there, which makes it even stranger, right?
It is a mess, and it's hard to figure out.
And it's like, what? Jed Hoyer is so, he was Theo's guy, and everyone knew he was going to, in effect, move up and take over the baseball stuff when Theo resigned because he got tired of ownership, basically. And Jed Hoyer has been if we think that John Mozeliak is overly cautious and conservative, right? Jed Hoyer is kind of bizarre. I don't understand him at all. It's like he doesn't want to make any big moves. And, he probably could have even done better when they were going into the fire sale mode. I don't know. I mean, this guy needs to do something or get off the pot, right? Because it's just the number 3 market in this sport just can't be on the sidelines with all the financial muscle they have. And it's just like, oh, we got you Brad Boxberger, Although I wish the Cardinals would go get Brad Boxberger, but I don't know. The NL Central
here, Bernie Verhagen's here.
That's right. I read somewhere, and I don't know where, but I almost I was eating yogurt with granola on top one of these mornings, right?
Yes.
And I almost I can't remember. I nearly choked to death or got some of it on my laptop. But I read someone who wrote like, well, if anything should happen to a Cardinal starter, the front office, really believes Drew Verhagen will be ready, to be a 5th starter.
Oh no!
Yeah, well, that's why I choked. I almost was trying to text my wife to say, I need a Heimlich maneuver up here.
Don't buy any more yogurt with granola for Bernie, please.
What a Twilight Zone division this is. I mean, you see those teams in the NL East, and they're all going in. I mean, they're going in big. And, the Padres are going nuts. The Giants are going nuts. There's all these teams around baseball going nuts. The Yankees always go nuts. But the NL Central, when the Milwaukee Brewers are the team that come away with, the biggest no-brainer move in the division so far this offseason. And listen, I think that Wilson Contreras signing was great. Don't get me wrong. But my point is, no one ever thought going into 2023 somehow the Brewers would get the 24-year-old younger brother who's probably just as good of a hitter. He's got to prove it over time, but probably just as good of a hitter as his older brother. And they would get him, and not for money, like Wilson cost money. William did not cost money. And they got him under contract control through, 2027, I think, or something like that. And they didn't have to give anything up to get him. That's my point of saying how that was the biggest get, because it was totally unexpected. And they really did not even have to give up a prospect that they were counting on. Because Ruiz, they had him rated as their 5th best outfield prospect in their system. So if the Cardinals, man, if they would flex their muscles, their financial muscle, what would they do? Where would it put them? How great could they be?
Oh,
but I just, man, it is what it is. It is what it is. It's all you can say.
Ben Clemens was on with you earlier, and he kind of hinted at something I thought was interesting when he, mentioned why not look at the Marlins for a trade and use your capital, and Pablo Lopez's name comes up, and I like it. And it intrigued me even more for this reason. And he said there's no basis for rumors. He's just throwing out ideas. But as he said it, I went, their manager has a pretty good idea of what kind of prospects the Cardinals have. And if he gets involved, he could tell them, hey, this guy or that guy, and we can make a deal. There might be a way that something could get done down there. Just for that simple fact. I don't know what they would want. I don't have a good basis for what their young prospects are and who they could have to replace somebody.
Right.
But when he brought that up, I was like, you know what? Cardinals can use that capital that they have because they all can't play here. Sorry, Cardinal organization. Not all those guys will be able to play on this roster at some point in the coming season. There's just not enough room. And if the Cardinals are smart, maybe they can go get a pitcher from down there. Lopez, maybe it's another guy that they have that we don't know that they're interested in moving at some point. But that brought it up that be aggressive, like you said. Get after it a little bit more in the front office through a trade. That would be awesome, I think.
Yeah, we'll see what they got planned, if anything. But I'm just kind of disappointed there's been a lull after the Contreras signing, and the only thing that holds me back, where I'm kind of restrained about this, is because even though I don't buy this Rodon nonsense, I just don't.
Mm-hmm. I'm there with you.
But I also, long time ago, or now it seems like a long time ago, I used to laugh at this notion that they could trade for Nolan Arenado. But to defend myself, my point wasn't that it's crazy to think that they would try to trade for Arenado and would be able to get him, because I know how reluctant Bill DeWitt is and John Mozeliak to give up a lot of elite prospect capital. And they also knew how much money was left on his contract, so it was extremely unlikely, which it was until the Rockies just lost their minds. They basically handed him to the Cardinals. Now, so when I said, well, they're not going to get Arenado, because I'm assuming the Rockies were going to actually demand a lot for Arenado and the Cardinals weren't going to go for it. Not the prospects and the money, but the Rockies, I think Montero's going to be a good third baseman for the Rockies. Don't get me wrong. I think he's going to be a nice player. Austin Gomber ain't anything. So the Cardinals didn't really give up much prospect capital, and the Rockies gave them a bunch of money to defray, a good chunk size of Arenado's contract. So, yeah, if I would have known that, I would have said, well, hell yeah, they'll go get Arenado. But this one is just a straight, free agent transaction. And unless people are getting wrong information, the prevailing view continues to be that he wants a $6 or $7 year deal at a price, an annual value of like $25 to $30 million a year. That's not a Bill DeWitt thing. It just isn't. So I'm just skeptical. But I'm also holding back because I've been surprised before. And so I guess you just don't say 100% no way, no how, never, ever, ever. I mean, it's just stupid to say that now until he signs with somebody. But no, I'm not buying it. But that also just makes me wonder, well, okay, they're not going to do that if we are right, and they're not going to do that. Well, what are they going to do? Because, look, it's a crowded house in the outfield, and I know all that. But come on, man, they could use bullpen help. Come on, they could. They could have a firmer rotation, even if you can't get a number one starter right now, or you don't choose to go get one. They could firm up that rotation a little bit, somewhat. But I don't want to be reading about how, Jordan Lyles. It's like, no, God. And to my media friends, and they are my friends, it's like, stop perpetuating this stuff. It's like, they could get a swingman like Jordan Lyles.
Oh, thank you.
Who had like a 7 ERA last year in Baltimore. It's like, what? Why do we enable the Cardinals? I just don't understand this. I'm not saying we got to go on the warpath all the time. Sometimes I think I overdo that, quite frankly, right? I try to be fair. I think for the most part I'm rational, but I also like to have fun on the radio and act up a little bit and be a little obnoxious. And I think someone has got to kind of raise a little hell, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, I just don't understand why. It's like piece after piece or this after this, where it's just like you just see stuff being said or you read stuff being written and you're like, it's like, what? Why would anyone present like Jordan Lyles as a possibility? Because you're echoing something that Gersh would say. I
got this out of the truck, guys. Look at it.
I mean, higher standards? Like, in other words, you can be realistic. You can maintain your sanity and your realistic mindset without settling for borderline garbage and like suggesting it as a media person. Well, Jordan Lyles, what about him? Don't let him anywhere near St. Louis. Why are you bringing that up? Like, in other words, I think media people in any market, but let's just talk about St. Louis, who are going to bring up, well, here's what you do. You go get this guy and you go get that guy and then you go get that guy and then you'll have 3 number one starters and instead of none, and you'll have a great number 5 hitter, and then you can move Contreras to number 6. People like that media people like that, fans like that, are totally disconnected from reality, and it's just stupid to suggest these things as a real possibility when they're not. But the opposite side of that is enabling the Cardinals by, in effect, it's like, well, what would the front office write if it had a column or a blog or whatever or a radio show? Like, well, what would they write? What would they say? Well, they would write, well, there's Jordan Lyles out there. So why would an independent media, in effect, endorse that rather than like laughing at it, right?
Yes, that's a bad one. He has a.
I just don't understand. I love St. Louis. I'm so glad I live here. I'm so glad I moved here. It's so great for my life and my career. But there are times where, and this is not, I'm not really, in fact, I'm not ripping the fans. There are times, though, where it's almost like, this is like the Twilight Zone. It's like the Stockholm Syndrome. It's like you start inheriting or taking on the mentality of the people that are sort of standing over you. They have a hold on you. You're their captive. So you adopt their thinking on everything. That's how we get to Jordan Lyles being a suggestion. That's how we arrive at a place like this. That's the only thing I can conclude. I know I'm going nuts, but what else is new, right?
I'm still shocked that the Lyles even is under consideration. I was like, I'd just assume go with what you have. If that's your option, don't.
Yeah, and last summer, let's go back to last summer. I'll be brief on this one to follow up your point. In June and in the run up to the trade deadline, if I saw it if I saw it online, or if I heard it on a radio show, if I heard it once, I heard it 100 times. It's like, well, Jordan Lyles fits what they're looking for. No, he doesn't. But people were writing and saying that last June and July. And it's like, why? I mean, I just don't understand, like, why you would do that. And his fielding independent ERA or his expected ERA last year was like 5 in Baltimore. The year before that it was 5.37. The year before that it was 5.41. Why does he fit what they're looking for? What? And why are you supposedly independent media mind? Why are you putting it out there like you're endorsing it? As it turned out, Mo, to his credit, really, actually to his credit, he aimed higher because Jose Quintana is an under-the-radar guy who was having a really good year in Pittsburgh. I mean, a really good year. That was a hell of a pickup, and they didn't give up much. And the Jordan Montgomery thing worked out great. Those two guys were exactly what they needed, and they weren't garbage. They were good pitchers. Were they Verlander? No, but you know what I'm saying. They were really good pitchers. But now we're back to the Jordan Miles thing. Why? Or Lyles, I should say. Why? And I'm just using him as an example.
Oh, I get that, yeah. I would get thrown out of the Cardinals meeting if I was part of that. But I'd say, Jordan Lyles, huh? I go, well, if we're going to do that, let's just give Jake Woodford his opportunity instead, okay?
That's exactly right.
And then they all leave me, you're out. We can't, you know how we think about Woodford. No. And I'm like, well,
yeah. Oh, my goodness. Before we take a break.
Baby, trade Verhagen for Lyles.
Yeah, okay. Hey, Verhagen's healthy.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Gersh is going to have the last laugh.
Oh, I don't know about this one.